Hey folks, starting off the video like I always do with a little greeting and a grumble as my brain tries to click in on what's going on. It is cold and I just finished that much freezing smoothie, so I am shivering something fierce. I have a topic today, which is good. I don't usually have a topic. I want to cover something that frustrates me deeply. It comes up from time to time. Sometimes smart people talk about it, sometimes dumb people talk about it. Today, we're gonna have a dumb person talking about it. And yeah, I know, penguin can't fly. Sad. All those HMs aren't around anymore, so that's different. Yeah. I want to discuss the topic of whether or not we live in a simulation. This comes up a lot, more than I really think it should. Short answer, I'm gonna spoil the conclusion here. No, we're not. You might be saying to yourself, that's a pretty bold claim. To which I would say, yes, but not nearly as bold of a claim as saying that we are. I believe the statement goes that an extraordinary claim requires extraordinary evidence. I don't think that exists, but I am going to give you my thoughts on why we are not in a simulation. And there's a few assumptions you have to make, just like you have to make if you think we are in a simulation. The statement is that any sufficiently advanced civilization is going to reach a point where they can create a simulation that is indistinguishable from their own reality. Whether or not that's possible, who knows? But that's the idea, is that if this is true, then any particular civilization could make trillions of simulations. And so there would be their real simulation, their real civilization, and then trillions of simulations. And the question becomes, if that's the case, what are the odds that we are in the one non-simulated universe versus the trillions or nigh infinite simulated ones? Now, this always bothers me because there's such an obvious flaw in this situation, is that if you're saying that our universe is almost certainly a simulation, we'll move up one step in the ladder. Whoever is simulating us is almost certainly a simulation, because what are the odds that they are the only real one, that they are not also simulated? And so then we move up another step. What are the odds that they're not simulated? Effectively zero. So then you create this infinitely long string of simulated universes, capping off with the one real one. That's ridiculous. If you do any sort of development, there's no way that would work. But so we've got that first thing. We've got this long chain going from our universe and eventually the ones that we create, all the way up to the one true universe. And what are the odds that not a single one of these infinitely many simulated universes, or nearly, it would converge on nearly infinite, that none of them have broken? Every single universe from that top one all the way down to us, none of them have corrupted. Not a single one has broken. All of them work. Have you ever made anything? Have you watched my videos of me stumbling about with code? My job in my day-to-day is to take programs that are made by teams that are professionals and make them actually work. And just, it's maddening. I'm shocked that even any video games you play work. When you fall through the floor in a Bethesda game, that does not shock me at all, because it is insane that things ever work. It's kind of like human bodies. It's insane that we ever manage to survive from the day-to-day. There's so many things that can go wrong. So really, does it seem plausible that infinitely many universes would not be failing? And then you've got to deal with time scale. Every one of those universes has to be currently in a situation where it is a non-zero timescale. Now you can make the argument that it flips to zero and then I guess I should describe what timescale is. So imagine our current life. Shouldn't be too hard. You're probably doing it right now. You are currently living in what would be considered a timescale of 1. Now, if you were in a timescale of 2, you would be moving, your life would be moving twice as fast as mine. Basically, for every 1 iteration of my life advancing forward, you would advance 2. And if you were in a timescale of 0.5, you would move at half the speed. It's sort of like relativity, but not only in the loosest sense. Timescale of 0, nothing moves. So if any universe above ours is at a timescale of 0, then every universe beyond it is also frozen because you do not have logic loops update in a timescale of 0. So that means that I've got to open the door for the cat. Yeah. Is that okay? Well, I guess she's going to be helping us. What was the time? Timescale. Right. It's going to be a little bit noisier because now the heater's going to be playing, but that's fine. That's fine. We'll deal. So this means that I know she hates the simulated universe story or idea too. If our in this infinite chain of timescales, all of them have to be above 0, because if they aren't, you're not moving. You could argue that they could toggle between 0 and 1. You'd never know because you could be frozen for trillions and trillions of years at 0, and then that the universe above you could be unpaused. And well, now you're not. I know, right? It's insane. She cats. What can you do? So basically, and obviously cats really make it difficult for you to think, or at least for me to think. Maybe you're our overlord simulating things. If you have these simulations within simulations, took me a moment to get back on my train of thought, you get into a situation where, if you want to think about it like while loops. Imagine you have a loop going. The first loop goes, and every time that loop goes, a single frame is rendered. I know. A single frame is rendered. Now put another while loop inside of that while loop. That inner loop will need to render once before the outer loop can render once. Now imagine sticking those 2 loops into another loop. Now you have 3 frames worth of time that has to pass before everything is finished. And you could have multi-threading and that sort of thing, but you're just getting into less and less plausible designs to where things actually work. Because again, we're dealing with an infinitely deep simulation at this point. Just off of the premise that the reason they say you're in a simulation is because it's all but certain that you are. It would also be all but certain that the universe above you is as well, and so on forever. So, if you've got infinitely many loops within one another, where each one has to finish before the next, and even if you did have multi-threading, and so multiple universes could be rendered at one time, or if you wanted to think about it like that, still, infinitely many iterations takes infinitely long to finish. And so now you've got a situation where nothing finishes. If you've ever had a while loop run on forever, you'll know that the program just breaks. It just never stops. Like, you never move on to the next frame. This is very similar to me to Zeno's paradox with the arrow. And the answer to the paradox for Zeno's paradox, although I'm kind of killing a future video, is why, if you can divide time infinitely small to the point where nothing is at any frame in an arrow's movement from now until it lands, you could take that exact moment and the arrow's not moving. You have no distance being traveled. So the question becomes, how do arrows move? Clearly we see they move. And the obvious answer to that paradox, like most other paradoxes, is, well, the answer is that time is not infinitely divisible. There is a smallest unit of time. And so time continues forward. We do not have a time scale of 0 in our universe. The time scale starts at, 0 point, maybe trillions of zeros, but eventually there is a 1. Or maybe it's a 7, who knows? And so that's the situation coming back with the simulated universes is, how do infinitely many simulations with infinitely many iterations all run for however long you want to deal with? I would suspect that it's been quite long. What amounts to an infinite amount of time, I suppose, even with the highest feasible time scale. You're still dealing with infinity, so infinite amount of time. How do all of these things work? How do all of these happen without there being any sort of break? And the answer is they don't. You're not in a simulation simply because it requires an enormous amount of justifications. It requires everything to work. It requires everything to be handled in such a way that it is imperceptible to you, and it requires you to make up new ideas and concepts and rules, like, well, maybe they have a computer that can just render infinitely many universes and it doesn't take any time. It's a quantum computer, But once you start adding all of these extra steps in order to make something work, the more realistic answer is just that you're wrong. That no, that thing doesn't work. If you can answer everything about our universe, or just as many things about our universe, with the we're not in a simulation, then there is no benefit to the simulation hypothesis. It doesn't add anything, and it requires a lot of assumptions to work. Now, for the end of this video, let's just assume that we are in a simulation. I know, after all that with me and the cat and time and heaters, you'd think by now that I would not want to go down this road, but I do. Because I have another point to make, which is, really, who cares? And I'll tell you why. Imagine everything in the universe has a value currently, if we assume that the universe is real, because it is. Everything has a value, and we'll just say that all of those values normalize out to 1, just because that's easier, right? This includes you, it includes everything you've ever loved or known, this includes everything you value. This includes everything that everyone values, past, present, and future. This includes the value of everything, both intrinsic, objective, and subjective. If the entire universe, everything in every direction for as far as the eye can and cannot see, everything we know and everything we will ever not know, if all of these things, if every single thing is a simulation, then the value of every single thing, all of it, depreciates or appreciates. I assume that's the opposite of depreciates. We're going with it. Depreciates or appreciates by the same amount. If everything goes down 50%, the now relative value of everything to everything else is exactly the same. So it doesn't matter. Nothing changes. The value of your life doesn't change. The value of your neighbor's life doesn't change. Your cats, they're still just as cute as they were yesterday, because even if you think of them as less cute, well, that would actually be a fallacy, or an error in judgment. But basically, they're not, because you and every feeling you've ever had, it all lowers down to that same level of their now simulated cuteness. And I need to make my screensaver longer than a few minutes. That's the crux of it. It doesn't add anything philosophical to discuss. Life and death are just as relatively meaningful or meaningless to everything else if it is a simulation or if it isn't. And it definitely isn't. Unless somebody comes up with a better explanation than, I mean, come on, look at the odds, man. You gotta be in a simulation because there'd be trillions of them, nearly infinitely many. Because it's like, yeah, but if you make that assumption, then it's true of the people simulating you, and the people simulating them, and the people simulating them. And you've just got this corkscrew going up for infinity. That's ridiculous. In going back to one person in particular, a guy who deals with companies who have so much riding on software working, Elon Musk. Dude, you will never see this because I assume you're a billionaire, and I'm a guy that's gonna get like 4 views on this video. Really? You didn't think beyond that first step? You were just like, well, it's math, dude. Really? Come on. You make cars that people are gonna be driving around in, man. Those cars have software in them. You're gonna get people killed if you're not thinking things through that far. You gotta go one step beyond what you're dealing with. But yeah, that's my bugbear for the day. This is actually my negative video for the short while. It's just ridiculous, and it's so frustrating because it feels like pseudo-intellectualism. It's one of those like borderline nihilistic views, and there's few things in this world that I find more naive than nihilism, which maybe we'll cover that sometime. But yeah, that's all I gotta say on that. Don't say we're in a simulation. If you do, please come up with something better than the odds thing. And I'm open. Like if you can provide an actual reasonable explanation. And I also don't think quantum mechanics is a good explanation. The way that the observer stuff works, it's not that humans have magic eyes that make things stay in certain positions. I'm not even smart enough to follow it, but oh god. Oh yeah, we'll do this real quick and then I gotta get this video stuff. If you imagine something extremely small, we're talking so small that electrons are infinitely small, I think. But basically, if you observe things that are extremely small, you do that with some kind of light, or maybe even magnetism or something, but still, there's some sort of physical medium that you are impressing upon this object, right? The light coming off the sun actually provides a very small but existing force on the things it hits. When electrons hit things, that's what light sails are, right? So when a light sail gets hit by solar rays, it gets pushed along. So if you're dealing with something extremely small and you want to see it really precisely, you're going to be bombarding it with a lot of light. No matter what wavelength it is, eventually you would presumably make it so that you could see it as a human. But you're hitting it with something. And if you hit it with something, even if it was stationary, it's no longer going to be stationary because it gets hit by the electron and it moves. So the more precise you want to see something, the more energy you are imparting on that thing. And so the further it moves. So you can't know both the position of something in what would be the electrical state or the physical state, but basically it's not that when you look at it you fire magic looking rays, and so that's why we're in a simulation, is that everything behind me is not being rendered right now, but if I look then it's suddenly being rendered. That's not, I don't understand it well enough to explain it, but I can assure you that if you have anyone smarter than me, which is most people, explain it. It's not magic. It's not eye magic. You're not in a simulation. You're beautiful. You're real. Enjoy it. You don't need excuses for making the world seem weird or fluffy or digital. I don't know. Yeah. That's all I got. I don't know if this is a long video or a short video, but I'm freezing and it felt good. So, if you didn't have a good day today, I hope you do. Well, obviously, I don't hope that you have a bad day today, but I hope that tomorrow you do have a good day, and beyond that, and so on. And who knows? Maybe one of these days I'll figure out an outro and an intro. I mean, I've got the hey folks, but I need something better than the death stare. Yeah, it's my cat.